Count your steps right now. How many have you hit today? Because if you're proud of that number, this is going to sting. 10,000 steps is almost irrelevant. What you do around them, when you take them, and how fast you move is what determines whether walking actually burns fat, controls your hunger, and protects your hormones, or does absolutely nothing. You've been treating walking like a calorie math problem. Steps in, calories out. Hit 10,000, feel accomplished, sit down for the rest of the day. That framing is exactly why it feels like it's not working, and the fix starts with understanding what walking is actually doing inside your body. The primary fat loss lever of walking is not the calories you burn during the walk. It is NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. That is the cumulative metabolic effect of low-intensity movement spread across your entire day. When you walk regularly and distribute movement throughout the day, your total daily calorie burn increases. The cumulative effect of consistent low-intensity movement adds up substantially. This is NEAT at work. More movement throughout the day means more total energy expended, not just during the walks themselves. That is not a warm-up benefit. That is a full-day metabolic signal. But here is where most people kill it. You do your 10,000 steps in one block, 45 minutes in the morning, done by 8, sit at a desk until dinner. That single session does not sustain the NEAT signal. Your body registers the movement, then registers 10 hours of stillness, and the metabolic upregulation fades. You essentially reset it every time you sit for that long. The fix is distribution. 3 shorter walks, morning, midday, and after dinner, generate a stronger and more sustained NEAT response than one long walk does. Same total steps. Completely different internal effect. Walking is one of the only forms of cardio that operates in what you could call the cortisol safe zone. Running spikes cortisol, HIIT spikes cortisol. Chronically elevated cortisol drives fat storage directly around the midsection and suppresses the hormonal chain that governs testosterone production. Walking keeps cortisol essentially flat. That is not a consolation prize for people who cannot run. That is a hormonal advantage that high-intensity work cannot replicate. You did not outgrow walking. You just never understood what it was actually doing. The third mechanism is the one most people are completely skipping, and it is arguably the most powerful one available to you. It is the postprandial walk. A 10-minute walk taken within 30 to 60 minutes of a meal blunts the insulin spike from that meal. The mechanism is muscular glucose uptake. Your working muscles pull sugar directly out of your bloodstream before insulin has to do it. That means less fat storage triggered, less energy crash afterward, and a more stable metabolic environment for the next several hours. This is one of the most well-supported, lowest effort metabolic interventions that exists, and it requires nothing except walking after you eat. Most people are doing their entire step count on an empty stomach at 6 in the morning and skipping this window completely. And you can already hear the objection forming. Morning walks feel better. The air is cleaner. It is your routine. It sets the tone for the day. That is fine. Keep the morning walk. But if fat loss is the actual goal, and you are only walking once, the 30-minute post-meal window is where the walk earns its keep. That is where the metabolic work happens. Everything else is a bonus. So, the number 10,000 steps was never the point. The point is what your body does with the signal you send it, when you send it, and how you distribute it. NEAT, cortisol control, postprandial insulin blunting, 3 mechanisms, none of which care how proud you were of your step count at 8 in the morning. But here is the part nobody talks about. The one variable that determines whether your walk actually triggers fat oxidation or barely registers at all. It comes down to a single number most people never check. Are you already doing the post-meal walk? Or have you been front-loading all your steps first thing in the morning? Drop your answer in the comments below. Now, Let's talk about the one number that determines whether your walk actually burns fat or just burns time. That single number is your walking pace, and specifically, whether you are hitting Zone 2 heart rate while you walk. Zone 2 is roughly 60 to 70% of your maximum heart rate. At that pace, you can hold a conversation, but it takes a little effort. You are not strolling. You are not sprinting. You are moving at the speed where your body preferentially burns fat as fuel rather than glycogen. That is the fat oxidation window. Drop below it, and you're not generating an optimal fat oxidation signal. Push significantly above it into high-intensity territory, and cortisol rises more meaningfully. Zone 2 is the sweet spot for sustained fat burning without creating a significant stress hormone response. Here is how you know which side you are on. If you can talk on the phone during your walk without any effort, full sentences, no breath, completely comfortable, you are too slow. You are not in Zone 2. You are in the movement is better than nothing zone, which is fine for general health, but will not trigger meaningful fat oxidation. On the other end, if you are walking so fast you cannot string a sentence together, you have crossed the line and cortisol is rising. The fix requires no heart rate monitor. Walk fast enough that talking feels slightly effortful. That is Zone 2. That is the pace where the walk actually earns its keep as a fat loss tool. Now, layer in what Zone 2 pace does to your hunger, because this is the mechanism most fat loss programs ignore entirely. When you exercise at higher aerobic intensities, your body can transiently suppress ghrelin, the hormone that drives hunger, during and shortly after the session. However, research suggests this effect is intensity dependent and is not reliably produced by low to moderate intensity walking alone. You are not just burning fat during the walk, you are chemically reducing how much you want to eat afterward. The walk is not the workout. The walk is the appetite reset. Compare that to chronic, high-volume endurance running. Extreme running volume can elevate cortisol over time and, in high-mileage athletes, may suppress the hormonal chain that governs testosterone production. Moderate recreational running does not carry the same hormonal risks. The math looks worse on a calorie tracker and better in your actual body. Now go back to the hook for a second. You thought you were already doing this right. You were hitting 10,000 steps. You were proud of the number. But the number was never the point. The point is Zone 2 pace, post-meal timing, distributed movement across the day, and the ghrelin suppression window. 4 variables. Most people are getting 0 of them right. So here is the full protocol. Everything this script has built toward, in the order you actually execute it. Walk within 30 minutes of your largest meal. That is the postprandial window where muscular glucose uptake blunts the insulin spike and stops the fat storage cascade before it starts. Hit a pace where talking feels slightly effortful. That is your Zone 2 confirmation. No device required. Stay at that pace for at least 20 continuous minutes to trigger the ghrelin suppression window. Then, break your remaining steps into smaller chunks across the day, rather than one long block, morning, midday, and after dinner, so the NEAT signal stays elevated instead of fading after hour 2 of sitting. 4 adjustments. None of them require a gym, a tracker, or a new pair of shoes. They require understanding what the walk is actually doing and then doing it correctly. This is the simplest fat loss lever you have not been using right. Now you have no excuse. Subscribe for more and watch the next video on screen. It goes even deeper